Hello, and welcome back to Storytime Banned Books, Read with Me. I'm Kathleen Francis, and this evening we will continue our reading of Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. Part 4, Waiting Room, Chapter 10. Sometimes I sing to myself, in my head, something lugubrious, mournful, Presbyterian. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound could save a wretch like me, who once was lost, but now am found, was bound, but now am free. I don't know if the words are right. I can't remember. Such songs are not sung anymore in public, especially the ones that use words like free. They are considered too dangerous. They belong to outlawed sects. I feel so lonely, baby. I feel so lonely, baby. I feel so lonely I could die. This, too, is outlawed. I know it from an old cassette tape of my mother's. She had a scratchy and untrustworthy machine, too, that could still play such things. She used to put the tape on when her friends came over and they'd had a few drinks. I don't sing like this often. It makes my throat hurt. There isn't much music in this house, except what we hear on the TV. Sometimes Rita will hum, while kneading or peeling, a wordless humming, tuneless, unfathomable. And sometimes, from the front sitting room, there will be the thin sound of Serena's voice, from a disc made long ago, and played now with the volume low, so she won't be caught listening as she sits there, knitting, remembering her own former and now amputated glory. Hallelujah. It's warm for the time of year. Houses like this heat up in the sun. There's not enough insulation. Around me the air is stagnant, despite the little current, the breath coming in past the curtains. I'd like to be able to open the window as wide as it could go. Soon we'll be allowed to change into the summer dresses. The summer dresses are unpacked, and they are hanging in the closet, 2 of them pure cotton, which is better than synthetics like the cheaper ones, though even so, when it's muggy in July and August, you sweat inside them. No worry about sunburn, though, said Aunt Lydia. The spectacles women used to make of themselves, oiling themselves like roast meat on a spit, and bare backs and shoulders, on the street, in public, and legs, not even stockings on them. No wonder those things used to happen. Things. The word she used when whatever it stood for was too distasteful or filthy or horrible to pass her lips. A successful life for her was one that avoided things, excluded things. Such things do not happen to nice women, and not good for the complexion, not at all, wrinkle you up like a dried apple. But we weren't supposed to care about our complexions any more. She'd forgotten that. In the park, said Aunt Lydia, lying on blankets, men and women, together sometimes. And at that she began to cry, standing up there in front of us in full view. I'm doing my best, she said. I'm trying to give you the best chance you can have. She blinked. The light was too strong for her. Her mouth trembled around her front teeth, teeth that stuck out a little and were long and yellowish. And I thought about the dead mice we would find on the doorstep when we lived in a house, all 3 of us, 4 counting our cat, who was the one making these offerings. Aunt Lydia pressed her hand over her mouth of a dead rodent. After a minute, she took her hand away. I wanted to cry, too, because she reminded me. If only she wouldn't eat half of them first, I said to Luke. Don't think it's easy for me either, said Aunt Lydia. Mora, breezing into my room, dropping her denim jacket on the floor. Got any cigs? She said. In my purse, I said. No matches, though. Mora rummages through my purse. You should throw out some of this junk, she says. I'm giving an underwhore party. A what? I say. There's no point trying to work. Mora won't allow it. She's like a cat that crawls onto the page when you're trying to read. You know, like Tupperware, only with underwear. Tarts stuff. Lace crotches, snap garters. Bras that push your tits up. She finds my lighter, lights the cigarette she's extracted from my purse. Want one? Tosses the package with great generosity, considering they're mine. Thanks piles, I say sourly. You're crazy. Where'd you get an idea like that? Working my way through college, says Mora. I've got connections, friends of my mom's. It's big in the suburbs. Once they start getting age spots, they figure they've got to beat the competition. The porno marts and what have you. I'm laughing. She always made me laugh. But here, I say, who will come? Who needs it? You're never too young to learn, she says. Come on, it'll be great. We'll all pee in our pants laughing. Is that how we live then? But we lived as usual. Everyone does, most of the time. Whatever is going on is as usual. Even this is as usual. Now. We lived as usual by ignoring. Ignoring isn't the same as ignorance. You have to work at it. Nothing changes instantaneously. In a gradually heating bathtub, you'd be boiled to death before you knew it. There were stories in the newspapers, of course, corpses in ditches or the woods, bludgeoned to death or mutilated, interfered with, as they used to say, but they were about other women, and the men who did such things were other men. None of them were the men we knew. The newspaper stories were like dreams to us, bad dreams, dreamt by others. How awful, we would say, and they were, but they were awful without being believable. They were too melodramatic. They had a dimension that was not the dimension of our lives. We were the people who were not in the papers. We lived in the blank white spaces at the edges of print. It gave us more freedom. We lived in the gaps between the stories. From below, from the driveway, comes the sound of the car being started. It's quiet in this area. There isn't a lot of traffic. You can hear things like that very clearly. Car motors, lawn mowers, the clipping of a hedge, the slam of a door. You could hear a shout clearly, or a shot, if such noises were ever made here. Sometimes there are distant sirens. I go to the window and sit on the window seat, which is too narrow for comfort. There's a hard little cushion on it, with a pettipoint cover, Faith, in square print, surrounded by a wreath of lilies. Faith, in a faded blue, the leaves of the lilies a dingy green. This is a cushion once used elsewhere, worn, but not enough to throw out. Somehow it's been overlooked. I can spend minutes, tens of minutes, running my eyes over the print. Faith. It's the only thing they've given me to read. If I were caught doing it, would it count? I didn't put the cushion here myself. The motor turns, and I lean forward, pulling the white curtain across my face like a veil. It's semi-sheer. I can see through it. If I press my forehead against the glass and look down, I can see the back half of the whirlwind. Nobody is there, but as I watch, I see Nick come around to the back door of the car, open it, stand stiffly beside it. His cap is straight now, and his sleeves are rolled down and buttoned. I can't see his face because I'm looking down on him. Now the commander is coming out. I glimpse him only for an instant, foreshortened, walking to the car. He doesn't have his hat on, so it's not a formal event he's going to. His hair is gray, silver, you might call it if you were being kind. I don't feel like being kind. The one before this was bald, and so I suppose he's an improvement. If I could spit out the window or throw something, the cushion for instance, I might be able to hit him. Moira and I, with paper bags filled with water bombs they were called, leaning out my dorm window, dropping them on the heads of the boys below. It was Moira's idea. What were they trying to do? Climb a ladder for something, for our underwear. That dormitory had once been co-educational. There were still urinals in one of the washrooms on our floor, but by the time I'd gotten there, they'd put things back the way they were. The commander stoops, gets into the car, disappears, and Nick shuts the door. A moment later, the car moves backward, down the driveway and onto the street, and vanishes behind the hedge. I ought to feel hatred for this man. I know I ought to feel it, but it isn't what I do feel. What I feel is more complicated than that. I don't know what to call it. It isn't love. 11. Yesterday morning I went to the doctor. Was taken by a guardian, one of those with the red armbands who is in charge of such things. We rode in a red car, him in the front, me in the back. No twin went with me. On these occasions I'm solitaire. I'm taken to the doctor's once a month for tests. Urine, hormones, cancer smear, blood test, the same as before, except that now it's obligatory. The doctor's office is in a modern building. We ride up in the elevator, silently, the guardian facing me. In the black mirror wall of the elevator, I can see the back of his head. At the office itself, I go in. He waits outside in the hall with the other guardians, on one of the chairs placed there for that purpose. Inside the waiting room there are other women, 3 of them, in red. This doctor is a specialist. Covertly we regard each other, sizing up each other's bellies. Is anyone lucky? The nurse records our names and the numbers from our passes on the CompuDoc to see if we are who we are supposed to be. He's 6 feet tall, about 40, a diagonal scar across his cheek. He sits typing, his hands too big for the keyboard, still wearing his pistol in the shoulder holster. When I'm called, I go through the doorway into the inner room. It's white, featureless, like the other one, the outer one, except for a folding screen. Red cloth stretched out on a frame, a gold eye painted on it, with a snake-twined sword upright beneath it, like a sort of handle. The snakes and the sword are bits of broken symbolism left over from the time before. After I've filled the small bottle left ready for me in the little washroom, I take off my clothes behind the screen and leave them folded on the chair. When I'm naked, I lie down on the examination table, on the sheet of chilly, crackling disposable paper. I pull the second sheet, the cloth one, up over my body. At neck level, there's another sheet, suspended from the ceiling. It intersects me so that the doctor will never see my face. He deals with a torso only. When I'm arranged, I reach my hand out, fumble for the small lever at the right side of the table, pull it back. Somewhere else a bell rings, unheard by me. After a minute, the door opens. Footsteps come in. There is breathing. He isn't supposed to speak to me except when it's absolutely necessary, but this doctor is talkative. "How are we getting along?" he says. Some tick of speech from the other time. The sheet is lifted from my skin. A draft pimples me. A cold finger, rubber-clad in jelly, slides into me. I am poked and prodded. The finger retreats, enters otherwise, withdraws. "Nothing wrong with you," the doctor says, as if to himself. "Any pain, honey?" He calls me honey. "No," I say. My breasts are fingered in their turn, a search for ripeness or rot. The breathing comes nearer. I smell old smoke, aftershave, tobacco, dust on hair. Then the voice, very soft, close to my head. That's him, bulging the sheet. "I could help you," he says, whispers. "What?" I say. "Shh," he says. "I could help you. I've helped others." Help me, I say, my voice as low as his. How? Does he know something? Has he seen Luke? Has he found... Can he bring back? How do you think? He says, still barely breathing it. Is that his hand, sliding up my leg? He's taken off the glove. The door's locked. No one will come in. They'll never know it isn't his. He lifts the sheet. The lower part of his face is covered by the white gauze mask. Regulation. 2 brown eyes, a nose, a head with brown hair on it. His hand is between my legs. Most of those old guys can't make it anymore, he says, or they're sterile. I almost gasp. He said a forbidden word. Sterile. There is no such thing as a sterile man anymore, not officially. There are only women who are fruitful and women who are barren. That's the law. Lots of women do it, he goes on. You want a baby, don't you? Yes, I say. It's true, and I don't ask why, because I know. Give me children, or else I die. There's more than one meaning to it. You're soft, he says. It's time. Today or tomorrow would do it. Why waste it? It'd only take a minute, honey. What he called his wife once. Maybe still does. But really it's a generic term. We are all honey. I hesitate. He's offering himself to me, his services, at some risk to himself. I'd hate to see what they put you through, he murmurs. It's genuine, genuine sympathy, yet he's enjoying this, sympathy and all. His eyes are moist with compassion. His hand is moving on me, nervously and with impatience. It's too dangerous, I say. No, I can't. The penalty is death. But they have to catch you in the act, with 2 witnesses. What are the odds? Is the room bugged? Who's waiting just outside the door? His hand stops. Think about it, he says. I've seen your chart. You don't have a lot of time left, but it's your life. Thank you, I say. I must leave the impression that I'm not offended, that I'm open to suggestion. He takes his hand away, lazily almost, lingeringly. This is not the last word as far as he's concerned. He could fake the tests, report me for cancer, for infertility, have me shipped off to the colonies with the unwomen. None of this has been said, but the knowledge of his power hangs nevertheless in the air as he pats my thigh, withdraws himself behind the hanging sheet. Next month, he says. I put on my clothes again behind the screen. My hands are shaking. Why am I frightened? I've crossed no boundaries. I've given no trust, taken no risk. All is safe. It's the choice that terrifies me. A way out. A salvation. 12. The bathroom is beside the bedroom. It's papered in small blue flowers, forget-me-nots, with curtains to match. There's a blue bath mat, a blue fake fur cover on the toilet seat. All this bathroom lacks from the time before is a doll whose skirt conceals the extra roll of toilet paper, except that the mirror over the sink has been taken out and replaced by an oblong of tin, and the door has no lock, and there are no razors, of course. There were incidents in the bathrooms at first. There were cuttings, drownings, before they got all the bugs ironed out. Cora sits on a chair outside in the hall to see that no one else goes in. In a bathroom, in a bathtub, you are vulnerable, said Aunt Lydia. She didn't say to what. The bath is a requirement, but it is also a luxury. Merely to lift off the heavy white wings and the veil, merely to feel my own hair again, with my hands, is a luxury. My hair is long now, untrimmed. Hair must be long, but covered. Aunt Lydia said, St. Paul said it's either that or a close shave. She laughed, that held-back neighing of hers, as if she told a joke. Cora has run the bath. It steams like a bowl of soup. I take off the rest of the clothes, the overdress, the white shift and petticoat, the red stockings, the loose cotton pantaloons. Pantyhose gives you crotch rot, Moira used to say. Aunt Lydia would never have used an expression like crotch rot. Unhygienic was hers. She wanted everything to be very hygienic. My nakedness is strange to me already. My body seems outdated. Did I really wear bathing suits at the beach? I did, without thought, among men, without caring that my legs, my arms, my thighs and back were on display, could be seen. Shameful, immodest. I avoid looking down at my body, not so much because it's shameful or immodest, but because I don't want to see it. I don't want to look at something that determines me so completely. I step into the water, lie down, let it hold me. The water is soft as hands. I close my eyes, and she's there with me, suddenly, without warning. It must be the smell of the soap. I put my face against the soft hair at the back of her neck and breathe her in, baby powder and child's washed flesh and shampoo, with an undertone, the faint scent of urine. This is the age she is when I'm in the bath. She comes back to me at different ages. This is how I know she's not really a ghost. If she were a ghost, she would be the same age always. One day, when she was 11 months old, just before she began to walk, a woman stole her out of a supermarket cart. It was a Saturday, which was when Luke and I did the week's shopping, because both of us had jobs. She was sitting in the little baby seats they had then in supermarket carts, with holes for the legs. She was happy enough, and I turned my back. The cat food section, I think it was. Luke was over at the side of the store, out of sight, at the meat counter. He liked to choose what kind of meat we were going to eat during the week. He said men needed more meat than women did, and that it wasn't a superstition, and he wasn't being a jerk. Studies had been done. There are some differences, he said. He was fond of saying that, as if I was trying to prove there weren't. But mostly he said it when my mother was there. He liked to tease her. I heard her start to cry. I turned around, and she was disappearing down the aisle, in the arms of a woman I'd never seen before. I screamed, and the woman stopped. She must have been about 35. She was crying and saying it was her baby. The Lord had given it to her. He'd sent her a sign. I felt sorry for her. The store manager apologized, and they held her until the police came. She's just crazy, Luke said. I thought it was an isolated incident at the time. She fades. I can't keep her here with me. She's gone now. Maybe I do think of her as a ghost, the ghost of a dead girl, a little girl who died when she was 5. I remember the pictures of us I once had, me holding her, standard poses, mother and baby, locked in a frame for safety. Behind my closed eyes, I can see myself as I am now, sitting beside an open drawer or a trunk in the cellar, where the baby clothes are folded away, a lock of hair, cut when she was 2, in an envelope, white blonde. It got darker later. I don't have those things anymore, the clothes and hair. I wonder what happened to all our things. Looted, dumped out, carried away, confiscated. I've learned to do without a lot of things. If you have a lot of things, said Aunt Lydia, you get too attached to this material world and you forget about spiritual values. You must cultivate poverty of spirit. Blessed are the meek. She didn't go on to say anything about inheriting the earth. I lie, lapped by the water, beside an open drawer that does not exist, and think about a girl who did not die when she was 5, who still does exist. I hope, though not for me. Do I exist for her? Am I a picture somewhere, in the dark at the back of her mind? They must have told her I was dead. That's what they would think of doing. They would say it would be easier for her to adjust. 8, she must be now. I've filled in the time I've lost. I know how much there's been. They were right. It's easier to think of her as dead. I don't have to hope then, or make a wasted effort. Why bash your head, said Aunt Lydia, against a wall? Sometimes she had a graphic way of putting things. I ain't got all day, says Cora's voice outside the door. It's true, she hasn't. She hasn't got anything at all. I must not deprive her of her time. I soap myself. I use the scrub brush and the piece of pumice for sanding off dead skin. Such Puritan aids are supplied. I wish to be totally clean, germless, without bacteria, like the surface of the moon. I will not be able to wash myself this evening, not afterwards, not for a day. It interferes, they say, and why take chances? I cannot avoid seeing now the small tattoo on my ankle, 4 digits and an I, a passport in reverse. It's supposed to guarantee that I will never be able to fade, finally into another landscape. I am too important, too scarce for that. I am a national resource. I pull the plug, dry myself, put on my red terry-cloth robe. I leave today's dress here, where Cora will pick it up to be washed. Back in the room, I dress again. The white headdress isn't necessary for the evening because I won't be going out. Everyone in this house knows what my face looks like. The red veil goes on, though, covering my damp hair, my head, which has not been shaved. Where did I see that film about the women kneeling in the town square, hands holding them, their hair falling in clumps? What had they done? It must have been a long time ago, because I can't remember. Cora brings my supper, covered, on a tray. She knocks at the door before entering. I like her for that. It means she thinks I have some of what she used to call privacy left. Thank you, I say, taking the tray from her, and she actually smiles at me, but she turns away without answering. When we're alone together, she's shy of me. I put the tray on the small white painted table and draw the chair up to it. I take the cover off the tray. A thigh of a chicken, overcooked. It's better than bloody, which is the other way she does it. Rita has ways of making her resentments felt. A baked potato, green beans, salad, canned pears for dessert. It's good enough food, though bland, healthy food. You have to get your vitamins and minerals, said Aunt Lydia, coyly. You must be a worthy vessel. No coffee or tea, though, no alcohol. Studies have been done. There's a paper napkin, as in the cafeterias. I think of the others, those without. This is the heartland here. I'm leading a pampered life. May the Lord make us truly grateful, said Aunt Lydia, or was it thankful? And I can start to eat the food. I'm not hungry tonight. I feel sick to my stomach, a little sick to my stomach, but there's no place to put the food, no potted plants, and I won't chance the toilet. I'm too nervous, that's what it is. Could I leave it on the plate? Ask Cora not to report me? I chew and swallow, feeling the sweat come out. In my stomach, the food balls itself together, a handful of damp cardboard, squeezed. Downstairs in the dining room, there will be candles on the large mahogany table, a white cloth, silver, flowers, wine glasses with wine in them. There will be the click of knives against china, a click or a clink as she sets down her fork with a barely audible sigh, leaving half the contents of her plate untouched. Possibly she will say she has no appetite. Possibly she won't say anything. If she says something, Does he comment? If she doesn't say anything, does he notice? I wonder how she manages to get herself noticed. I think it must be hard. There's a pat of butter on the side of the plate. I tear off a corner of the paper napkin, wrap the butter in it, take it to the cupboard, and slip it into the toe of my right shoe, from the extra pair, as I have done before. I crumple up the rest of the napkin. No one surely will bother to smooth it out, to check if any is missing. I will use the butter later tonight. It would not do this evening to smell of butter. I wait. I compose myself. Myself is a thing I must now compose, as one composes a speech. What I must present is a made thing, not something born. We'll stop there. Thank you for joining me.